Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to welcome Acting Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, Robin Colosimo. Thank you. And Chief of Engineers and Commanding General of the United States Army Corps of Engineers, Lieutenant General Butch Graham, to discuss the fiscal year 2026. And I think I forgot somebody, didn't I? Oh, it's further down. You took care of me. Okay. Let's see. I'm equally pleased to welcome Senior Advisor to the Secretary, Scott Cameron. Mr. Cameron, good morning, sir, to discuss the request for the Bureau of Reclamation and Central Utah project. We scheduled this hearing with the expectation that we would have the full budget request for these critical programs. I appreciate the challenge facing any new administration in submitting a timely budget request to Congress. However, we cannot do our work without those details. I hope we can expect that information soon so that we can begin the important work of funding our nation's water resource development programs. In the meantime, the administration has provided a top-line budget request for the Corps and Reclamation, highlighting specific areas where reductions are proposed. The request for the Corps totals $6.7 billion, a reduction of $2 billion, or roughly 23%. Within the total for the Corps, $1.7 billion is proposed for harbor maintenance trust activities, which is approximately $1.8 billion below the maximum offset provided in law. Consistent with prior years, the budget request does not maximize investment in our nation's ports and harbors. One of my top priorities is continuing the progress on the recapitalization of our nation's inland waterway system. I was pleased to see a $32 million included in fiscal year 2025 work plan to award additional option for the final contract at Chickamauga Lock, which is in my district. I want to express my gratitude for the Trump administration's prioritization of this important project. I look forward to working with our witnesses to get Chick Lock across the finish line. In fact, I'm going to visit there again next week. I appreciate the plan's robust investment in construction on the inland waterway system more broadly, and I hope the full fiscal year 2026 budget continues that support. We expect significant out-year demands for this work, and the longer we wait to address today's need, the more difficult it will be to manage tomorrow's. For the Bureau of Reclamation and Central Utah project, the request proposes a total of $1.2 billion, a stated reduction of $609 million, or approximately 35% below the enacted level. I'm concerned that at this level, we will not be able to address the most pressing water resources needs across the West. Of particular concern is the ability to continue progress on existing Indian water rights settlements. Upholding our nation's treaty and trust responsibilities is among the Department of Interior's highest priorities, and we cannot afford to fail delivering access to safe and reliable water supplies across Indian country. We will wait for the details of the request to analyze the proposal's impact on farmers, ranchers, and households across the West that depend on Reclamation's water and power delivery mission. I appreciate our witnesses for being here today to explain your budget requests and discuss the administration priorities for these agencies. I look forward to working with you and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to develop a bill that addresses our nation's most pressing water resource development challenges. With that, now I will turn to my friend, the distinguished ranking member, Ms. Kaptur, for her opening statement. Ms. Kaptur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You build America, and we respect that. I welcome this opportunity to examine recent actions for the budget requests for the Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation. Thank you to our witnesses for devoting your lives to the nation and for joining us today. Your agencies play a critical role in developing the resources of our land while mindful of our obligations to future generations. Your vital work strengthens our economy, sustains life on Earth, and ensures public safety. against the now constant onslaught of both increasing natural and human-caused disasters across our country, which is growing in population, headed to 500 million people. For example, the Corps played a vital role in clearing the waterways after the Key Bridge collapse in Baltimore. Thank you so much. And you are currently carrying out wildfire debris removal in Los Angeles County. Thank you for your exemplary service to our country. You hold us together, and all those who serve in the Corps and the Bureau. The proposed cuts to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation are not just misguided, they are dangerous. Slashing their budgets and eroding their workforce endangers people's lives and public safety, undermines economic growth, and weakens our the national welfare of the country in the face of climate change. Let's start with the Corps of Engineers. Your work is not just about dams and levees. It's about protecting lives and building America's public infrastructure to manage flood control systems that safeguard our communities from the devastating effects of extreme weather. And we saw that this past week with the terrible tornadoes from St. Louis and all surrounding states. Along the shores of Lake Erie, the largest freshwater system in the world, we know what's at stake. Erosion, rising lake levels, the problems with algal blooms, and increasingly violent storms threaten homes, businesses, and public assets. We cannot build safety and a habitable environment for our growing population on shrinking budgets and shrinking staff. In the Great Lakes region, modernization of projects like the Soo Locks are a prime example of long overdue investments that will turbocharge our economy. 100% of America's domestic iron ore passes through the Soo Locks. Think about how important that makes this strategic infrastructure. Steel is a $500 billion industry. It supports 123,000 middle-class jobs, and I'm a strong advocate for reshoring the U.S. steel industry and growing those numbers. But we have to modernize the shipping lanes and the waterways and our ports for today and the future. This project will ensure our heartland's maritime, industrial, agricultural, and commercial products are safe and efficiently moved. Think about our region as the shortest distance by way of the Atlantic Ocean to the ports of Northern Europe and beyond. Canada, the Great Lakes, and St. Lawrence Seaway hasten global trade, and President Eisenhower understood its place within our continental enterprise and global defense. So must we, as we witness the dawn of the new Arctic age. Similarly, the Brandon Road Project aims at arresting the potential enormous economic and environmental damage that can be unleashed by the invasion of the Asian carp. They could exterminate local and regional aquatic fish and species, and that would be devastating to our Great Lakes' $7 billion fishery and its $16 billion recreational boating industry. These are astounding numbers. The Corps of Engineers has a return of investments of over 200 to 1 in terms of economic benefits for every dollar invested. Ports, locks, and inland waterways maintained by the Corps are vital arteries for our very large nation and its commerce. In the Great Lakes region alone, these investments ensure that goods from American steel to Ohio soybeans can reach domestic and global markets, and cuts to this work would cause costly delays, limit our competitiveness, and harm local economies. Now, to the Bureau of Reclamation. Though it serves primarily the western United States, its importance cannot be overstated. The Bureau manages water supply for over 31 million Americans in the dry, and I guess I would say, coming from my part of the country, drier western states, irrigates 10 million acres of farmland, and generates hydropower for millions of homes. In this time of unprecedented drought and water stress, we must bolster, not diminish, Reclamation's capacity to invest in sustainable water systems and innovative conservation technologies. Presidents Theodore Roosevelt and Herbert Hoover understood what development west of the Mississippi would require, so must we. Let's be clear, disinvestment in the Corps and Bureau now will lead to higher costs down the road. Deferred maintenance becomes disaster recovery. Preventable failures become national emergencies. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, this is not the time to retreat, it is time to lead. We must provide these agencies with the resources they need to protect our growing population, strengthen our economy, and safeguard our environment for generations to come. Finally, I truly condemn the extreme politicization of critical Army Corps construction funding decisions, as we saw in last week's work plan. It is yet another reminder that Congress must reclaim its authority over funding decisions by passing full-year appropriation bills. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, and our guests. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Capter. Once again, thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Without objection, your full written testimonies will be entered into the record. With that in mind, we would ask that you please summarize your opening statements in 5 minutes. And the significance of that is I'm sure we're going to probably have 2 rounds even of questions and the like, but I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask you questions. With that, Ms. Colosimo, you are now recognized for your opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Fleischman, Ranking Member Capter, and distinguished members of the committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss the President's budget request for the Civil Works Program of the Army Corps of Engineers. As you know, the President's discretionary funding request for the fiscal year 26 was submitted to Congress earlier this month. That request laid out the President's priorities for discretionary funding with recommendations to reach balance and restore confidence in America's fiscal management. The President's top-line discretionary funding request for fiscal year 26 includes $6.663 billion for the Army Civil Works Program. The Civil Works Program has dedicated its primary missions of commercial navigation, flood and storm damage reduction, and aquatic ecosystem restoration. The budget focuses on opportunities to support these missions that provide high return to the American public, such as facilitating maritime commerce and addressing the most significant floods facing communities. The details of the President's budget, which will present a unified, comprehensive plan for America to address the overlapping challenges we face in a fiscally and economically responsible way, will be released in the coming weeks. I look forward to discussing the details of the fiscal year 26 funding request for the Civil Works Program of the Army Corps of Engineers soon thereafter. Since the detailed budget for fiscal year 26 has not yet been finalized and released, we will not be able to discuss capabilities of individual projects or studies at today's hearing. While the President's detailed budget request for fiscal year 26 has not been released, we did recently release the fiscal year 25 work plan for the Civil Works Program. The work plan supports our coastal ports and inland waterways, invests in projects that will reduce floods risks, and includes $446 million to advance the President's commitment to restore Florida's Everglades. I would like to highlight a few examples of the projects funded in 25 work plan today. The fiscal 25 work plan will improve commercial navigation at our nation's ports and waterways. It includes $264.13 million for the Sault Ste. Marie replacement lock in Michigan and $172.711 million in the Sabine-Neches waterway in Texas and $33.436 million for the Houston Ship Channel in Texas to prepare and replace, in that case, to prepare replacement areas for future dredging, and $1.62 million to complete the validation study for the Matagorda Ship Channel widening and deepening project in Texas. It also provides $32.19 million for the Chick Lock in Tennessee River project, $44 million for the Upper Ohio, Allegheny, and Beaver Counties, Pennsylvania project, and $122.9 million to complete the major rehabilitation of the Illinois waterway T.J. O'Brien Lock and Dam. The work plan also funds important dam safety projects, including $283.719 million for the Rough River, Kentucky project, $65.33 million for the Pipestem Lake, North Dakota project. Finally, the work plan advances reforms to bring better value to the American public. For example, it includes $49.25 million for the hydraulic structures validation test bed in Vicksburg, Mississippi, which will provide a new physical modeling capability that will enable large-scale testing of lock and dam components. This facility will empower the Corps to innovate infrastructure more efficiently. The work plan also reflects on the Corps' commitments with its non-federal partners to accelerate projects and create efficiencies in their delivery through non-federal implementation where appropriate. To that end, the Corps is developing guidance to implement Section 1043B of the Water Resources Development Act of 2014 as amended. This will allow the Corps to transfer funds to non-federal sponsors for the implementation of projects. The President's 26 budget will build on this momentum and continue to advance the primary missions of the Corps. Thank you for inviting me today, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much for your opening statement. General Graham, you are now recognized, sir, for 5 minutes for your opening statement. Thank you, sir.
Chairman Fleischman, Ranking Member Capter, and members of this subcommittee, I'm honored to testify before you today in regard to the President's fiscal year 2026 top-line discretionary budget request for the United States Army Corps of Engineers Civil Works Program. Through the Civil Works Program, the Army Corps works with our partners to study, build, and operate water resource projects focusing on our three main mission areas of commercial navigation, flood and storm damage reduction, and aquatic ecosystem restoration. The navigation program underpins the national economy, ensuring that commodities can move reliably and efficiently along 12,000 miles of inland waterways, 13,000 miles of intercoastal waterways, and into 1,000 coastal Great Lakes and inland harbors. Our flood and storm damage reduction program maintains 746 dams and over 13,000 miles of federal levees that provide over $200 billion, which is an astonishing number, in flood damages avoided when averaged over a 10-year period. The Army Corps is also the largest owner-operator of hydroelectric power plants in the United States, with 75 plants producing approximately 25% of the nation's total hydropower. As Ms. Colosimo spoke to, the Civil Works program is performance-based and focused on high-performing projects and programs. The Corps uses a targeted approach to invest in water resources which benefit the nation now and into the future. The discretionary request includes nearly $6.7 billion for the Civil Works program. As we discussed when I was last in front of this committee back in February, our objective every day is to safely deliver quality projects on schedule and within budget. To this end, our current, as of yesterday, on-schedule rate across the Civil Works portfolio is an 81%. That's a low B. This performance is influenced by factors both controllable and uncontrollable. Focusing on those things we can control, the Army Corps is absolutely committed to procedural improvements in the following three areas. We got to get the engineering right. The focus here is on the maturity of the design. I remain committed to my pledge that I made last time I was here to not request project authorization unless the engineering design is at the 35% level. Second imperative is to get the project management right. Here we're focusing on crafting logical, fully resourced schedules and sticking dogmatically to them, ensuring that we're delivering these important projects with a great sense of urgency. Third thing is to get the team that's building these right. We're striving to bring together the right mix of talent, either by onboard professionals within the Corps or by leveraging the private sector. So the path to success is clear. Plan projects thoroughly and then build them rapidly with the right team of master craftsmen. I look forward to working with this committee to stay on that path. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to answering any questions.
General, thank you for your opening statement. Mr. Cameron, good morning, sir. You are now recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Fleischman, Ranking Member Capter, members of the subcommittee, delighted to be with you this morning to talk about the President's fiscal 2026 budget blueprint request for the Bureau of Reclamation and discuss what our team is doing to make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous. Reclamation's projects and programs serve as the water and power infrastructure backbone of the American West, constituting an important driver of economic growth in hundreds of basins throughout the 17 western states. Reclamation manages water for agriculture, hydropower production, municipal and industrial use, and provides flood control and recreation for 90 million people. Reclamation's activities support economic activity valued at $64 billion and support approximately 500,000 jobs. Reclamation delivers 10 trillion gallons of water to millions of people each year and provides water for irrigation of 10 million acres of farmland, which yields approximately 25% of a nation's fruit and nut crops and 60% of a nation's vegetable harvest. Bureau of Reclamation's 2026 budget blueprint of $1.2 billion focuses on the core mission of maintaining assets that provide safe, reliable, and efficient management of water resources throughout the western United States. The Water and Related Resources Appropriations Account is a primary source of discretionary appropriations for carrying out Reclamation's mission to manage, develop, and protect water and related resources in the western U.S. This account supports the planning, construction, operations, maintenance, and rehabilitation of reclamation projects that deliver water for agricultural, municipal, and industrial use, generate significant amounts of hydroelectric power, and support environmental stewardship and recreation. It also supports programs that promote water conservation, improve infrastructure reliability, and ensure compliance with applicable environmental laws. Within the water-related resources account, appropriations are organized into several functioning categories. Land management and development covers the stewardship of federal lands associated with reclamation projects, including recreation, cultural resources, and public safety. The Fish and Wildlife Management area development supports species and habitat protection, ensuring compliance with the Endangered Species Act and other environmental statutes. Facility operations ensures that reclamations, dams, canals, and power plants operate safely and efficiently to deliver water and power generation to our communities. As the chairman mentioned earlier, Indian water rights is a significant concern for the Bureau of Reclamation, and within a budget-constrained environment, we intend to do everything we can to meet our obligations to Indian tribes. The Central Valley Project includes multiple divisions, including the American River Division, Delta, and the Trinity River Division. Together, they maintain and modernize facilities and increase water conveyance to Southern California and the San Joaquin Valley. The Klamath Project in Oregon and California ensures operational flexibility for irrigation deliveries and natural resource management. The Bureau of Reclamation's work on the Colorado River is increasingly important, especially in light of the 2026 expiration of a number of agreements. We are working very closely at a senior level, very intensively with the governor's representatives of all 7 basin states to help them find a mutually agreeable path forward, realizing that it needs to be a state-driven solution. In summary, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, I look forward to answering your questions, and thank you for your time.
And I thank you, Mr. Cameron. We will now begin with questions for 5 minutes. I'm going to ask everybody to please hold their questions to 5 minutes because we have other people having to move in and out with other hearings going on. Beginning with my own. General Graham, thank you again for being with us a second time this year. You and I have already discussed the importance of finishing the job on Chickamauga Lock, sir. I was disappointed with last year's setback caused by an uncompetitive bid environment. Many projects have faced similar challenges in recent years. With the revised contract currently out for bid, what steps has the Corps taken to enhance competition and avoid similar problems? Are there lessons learned that can be applied across the enterprise? Finally, more generally, it seems like Chickamauga Lock is out ahead of several ongoing inland waterway construction projects. In what ways are you leveraging this project as a learning opportunity to improve project delivery across the nation? Thank you, sir.
Chairman Fleischman, thank you for that question. Specifically on increasing competition at Chickamauga, a lot of our facilities are in remote areas where, and as the ranking member mentioned earlier, the Sioux Lock and Dam is another example, where we've got to go and make the steps necessary to attract contractors and the labor force to go to these remote areas. So the lesson learned from the unsuccessful last project award is we have a targeted marketing campaign that we've had ongoing to reach out to the 26 largest prime contractors that do this work. The pool of contractors, general contractors that do this work, that have the bonding capacity to do this level of work is fairly limited, and we know who those are. So this time around, the district, and with support from its division, were much more targeted in reaching out to those contractors. They held virtual site visits to attract talent, and I'm happy to announce we had 74 attendees join us for that virtual site visit. And then they did, before the proposals went out, they did on-site pre-proposal site visits. And we had over a 2-day period, 75 contractors showed up on the first day, 24 showed up on the second day. And so that's many, many more than we've had at the pre-proposal visits in the past. And so that's a best practice. And for all of our construction projects in remote areas, Mr. Chairman, we plan to make sure that the districts are following those best practices. Sir, your second question was how are we getting better at making sure that we've got the right team doing the design work and doing the construction work? We've consolidated that. Chickamauga and the Kentucky Lock and Dam, those two Tennessee River projects, those are legacy projects. We haven't done work that way for 10 years. What we do now is all the design for the inland system is with one center, the Inland Nav Design Center. Just like how you get good at anything, it's reps and sets. And so we're not building locks and dams in all the districts throughout the country. We're doing them in one or two specific districts at any given time. And so that will concentrate the design reps and sets. The second thing we're doing then is once you design it, you got to build it. And so we're concentrating the contracting and then the construction into two districts. And those will be Pittsburgh and Rock Island. And that'll give them the reps and sets. In fact, Pittsburgh just took over the construction of the Kentucky Lock and Dam. We're leaving Chickamauga with the Nashville district with close oversight. And we're confident that we'll get this contract awarded this summer, and we'll get this lock up into operation by 28.
Thank you, sir. In my remaining time, Mr. Cameron, thank you for your opening remarks about Indian water rights and settlements. Very important to us, and I think members on both sides of the dais. Can you provide us a status update for the subcommittee on ongoing settlements? And recognizing you can't share the details about the request, can you please speak to the administration's big picture plans and vision for delivering on those commitments? Mindful we have less than a minute.
Mr. Chairman, we are focused primarily on the statutory deadlines for fulfilling our financial obligations to Indian tribes. That's the top priority. The second priority is working with tribes to figure out how they might contribute to a broader settlement of water rights issues on a regional basis and water allocation, such as in the Colorado River Basin.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I would like to recognize the ranking member, Ms. Capter, for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. General Graham, I wanted to ask your help, and you already are helping with your FUSRAP program for the areas that have been contaminated around our country. And one of these is in Northwest Ohio, in the town of Lucky, not far from where I grew up and still live today. The Toledo Blade, over the last couple of months, has done superb reporting on the history of this site and the horrors done to the workers and surrounding community during the Cold War as part of the nuclear weapons race under the purview of the former Atomic Energy Commission. Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd like to place on the record 2 important articles from the Blade on this topic.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much. General Graham and Ms. Colosimo, as part of this reporting, the Blade discovered radioactive substances in multiple locations around the Lucky site, which were above normal. You have been very proactive, thank you, in communicating with me and my staff on this topic. However, one of the things you told my office was that you had confirmed that the radioactive materials discovered by the Blade were not related to the Lucky site. Did we understand that correctly? Is that still your position?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. Can you please explain to me what other possible sources of this magnitude of radiation might be responsible for its presence in this area, if not for the Lucky site?
Ranking Member Capter, thank you. We remain confident that no FUSRAP-related material has migrated off the Lucky site, and we're committed to a safe remediation of that site.
I understand what happened in St. Louis is a possible analog to what's happening in our area. In that case, the contamination was migrating through the soil to the water. Is that a possible explanation here?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm very concerned about this situation. Would like to have more clarity on what's in the water, what's in the soil, and what the dangers are to this region. Can you commit to me that you will get the water and soil tested?
Working with our state partners, with Ohio EPA, they're the ones that are currently doing the water testing, and so we are being absolutely transparent with them with what is on the Lucky site and our remediation plan.
Can you commit to me that you'll continue to keep us informed of everything that is going on out there, even to do a public briefing at some point in the region.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I want to change topics to Brandon Road. The Brandon Road project is aimed at arresting the economic and environmental damage unleashed by the unfortunate migration of Asian carp species that will definitely eliminate our massive fishery if allowed to proceed up into the Great Lakes. It's vital that the Brandon Road project proceed in a timely manner. Could you kindly, General Graham, tell us the status in getting all federal and state entities on the same page to proceed with the project?
Ranking Member Capter, thank you for that question. On Brandon Roads, the President had signed a memo in support of that on the 9th of May. And on that same date, Governor Pritzker had a press release saying that his needs are met and that Illinois is working to get the necessary real estate. So with that in hand, we released the solicitation for Contract 1A last Friday. And what that first contract is for the bubbling system and the acoustic system. This is part of a multi-layered defense. And so that contract has been released, and once that's awarded and constructed, that will be the start of fish deterrence, which is great news.
All right. Is it possible for your staff to get us the press release or whatever went out seeking contractors in that area?
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate that very much. Do we assume that the fiscal year 2026 budget request will include the full capability for the Brandon Road project?
Ma'am, we're certainly going to put forth the best estimate we can and have the administration consider it. We do expect to have the FY26 here soon, but the President signaling his interest in this project and support of it will be a helpful action there.
Thank you very much. I'm going to really switch to another subject here. General Graham, do you share General Spellman's goal of 70% use of dredge material for beneficial use by 2030?
Absolutely.
You do. Thank you very much on that. My time has expired, and thank you so very much for answering our questions this morning.
And thank you, Ranking Member Captain. We will have a second round for anybody who would like to ask additional questions. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend, Mr. Simpson of Idaho, is Chairman of the Interior Subcommittee of Appropriation and has also served as Distinguished Chair of this subcommittee in the past. Mr. Simpson, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. You're the largest construction company in the world, and you do a great job, and you have projects in every congressional district, I believe. And we sometimes complain, but we're really good at that. So I'll start off by complaining just a little bit. No, not really. I've been working on a project, Gooding, Idaho, the Gooding Wall replacement, for about 20 years now. In fact, I've been told by some of my constituents down there that I can't retire and enjoy the rest of my life until this gets done. So you're affecting my future by not getting this done. The design for the project seemed to be moving along just fine until the Corps recently had to increase its cost estimates for the project. Now the city of Gooding will have to consider alternatives, including shrinking the project's footprint and attempting to get more funding in order to keep the project moving forward. Seems to me we are going a bit out of order here. Are there ways the Army Corps of Engineers could do things differently, or authorities that Congress could provide you all that we have better ideas of the true costs of these projects before we have funded them? And along that same line, depending on how Gooding wants to proceed, we may approach the 902 limit for the project. Should we hit that limit, do I have your commitment that the Corps will do its part in providing the information needed to increase the project's authorized level and will continue to do the work to express capabilities in future fiscal years?
Representative Simpson, thank you for that question. On the last part of the question first, absolutely on the 902 limit. On the cost increases, we absolutely have to do a better job. That last hearing, that was our commitment to this subcommittee, and that all starts with getting the engineering right. No more putting out a programming number where we're unsure about the what it is we're going to build, right? You can say, hey, I want to go build a house and put a number out there, but until you know you want a 3-car garage, 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms with a walk-in pantry, you don't really know with good certitude what that construction project is likely to cost. Right. And in the past, we have done that. We have asked for authorization where we don't really have the scope defined, and because we don't have the engineering advanced, at least up to 35% design. So on Gooding, that's a case where we absolutely have to make sure we get the engineering right at the beginning.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and just remember, you're affecting my future and the enjoyment of my future. Anyway, one other question, or a couple others. The Snake River quagga mussels, as you know, in 2023, we found quagga mussels in the Columbia Basin, starting in the Snake River, and the Department of Agriculture in Idaho started an eradication program. The Corps is currently partnered with the state of Idaho in its efforts to control the spread of these quagga mussels in the Columbia River Basin, and it's authorized to provide up to 50% cost share for rapid response efforts on quagga mussels. What is the current status of the Corps' reimbursement to the state of Idaho for eligible expenses in the quagga mussel treatment?
Representative Simpson, thanks for that. The aquatic plant control project remains currently funded, but we will run out of funding in that program at the end of FY26.
We'll try to make a change in that. Okay, I'm going to ask a question about Albany Falls Dam in North Idaho on Lake Pend Oreille. The Corps has determined that the locks are inadequate or are defective, and that probably all of them are, and so they're going to have to be replaced. The community in North Idaho, this affects the level of the lakes and so forth, and the community, recreation is a huge issue up there, and so the lake levels change because of that, because you're conservatively monitoring that. The communities are concerned that your estimate that it may take till the end of the decade to replace this, is that where we still are, that it will take that long?
Representative Simpson, we absolutely understand that the risk reduction measures we've had to take place by lower the pool, that affects the users around the lake, and we take that very seriously. But the spillway gates need repaired. They're in design right now, and like I said earlier, with a good engineering estimate, then we can put a good construction estimate out there. But our commitment to you is to get those gates repaired and get the lake level back to its water control manual levels as soon as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron, one other question. I'm glad, as the chairman is, that you mentioned Indian water rights. It's going to eat the interior budget. These water rights settlements are enormous cost. We've wondered why they don't come out of the judgment fund like other settlements do that the federal government engages in, but that's something we'll have to explore. But I wanted to ask you, what is the water outlook for Idaho right now for the upcoming growing season?
Mr. Simpson, the West is in chronic drought in most places. It varies obviously regionally. My understanding is that Idaho is probably not much worse than most of the rest of the West, and some parts of the state are actually in better shape.
Thank you all for being here and for what you do.
Mr. Simpson, I thank you again for all you do and for your questions. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend and colleague, Mr. Levin of California, for 5 minutes.
I thank my friend, the chairman, and I thank you all for being here. The Army Corps Civil Works Program has a long history of funding critical infrastructure work for water resource development. In California, where I'm from, that's often included flood control and beach nourishment. And the Corps' strength as an institution rests in non-partisanship and in its ability to provide engineering and construction support regardless of political affiliation. The nonpartisan nature of the Corps ensures that projects are executed objectively and meet the needs of the public. And I think that all of us in this room can agree that our vital infrastructure simply should never be partisan. So, Ms. Colosimo, I was shocked when I saw the Corps released its fiscal 25 work plan last week, which zeroed out funding for critical construction projects in California. And when you dig deeper into the numbers, you see that the administration has shifted more than $250 million away from the construction of critical infrastructure projects in the so-called blue states, like California and Washington, and moved it to the so-called red states. Ms. Colosimo, do you agree that the Corps should operate in a nonpartisan manner?
Yes, sir, we should always be non-political.
I appreciate that. I have the numbers right in front of me that indicate that that may not be taking place. The Corps decided not to fund projects in California that were in the fiscal 25 budget requests and included in both the House and Senate bills on a bipartisan basis That includes $34.4 million for the American River Common Features Project, $38.5 million for the Pajaro River Project, $10 million for the San Joaquin River Basin Project, and $43.5 million for the West Sacramento Project. Simply does not make sense that the most populous state in the country should receive $0 for construction work. And this isn't limited to California. In total, the so-called blue states saw a reduction of nearly $500 million, while the so-called red states saw an increase of $257 million. I'm going to repeat, these core projects should be nonpartisan. They should be focused on saving lives, reducing damage to property, and spurring local economies. And this is what I think a lot of us feared when we saw that our colleagues rushed through the continuing resolution that stripped Congress's ability to direct funds with state and local input and instead gave all discretion to the administration to unilaterally decide how to dole out taxpayer funds. I would hope that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle find this as distasteful as I do. This is a lousy precedent that's being set here. Ms. Colosimo and General Graham, can you both commit to standing up against efforts in future work plans and budget requests that would further politicize the Army Corps budgeting decisions?
Yes, sir, if I may. We always put forth the best projects. In this case, it's a dicey situation, as you said. The House and Senate marks were around $3 billion, and we were at the continuing resolution of about 1.8. So they made hard choices, the administration did, and they had that discretion.
Do you, reclaiming my time, do you have any other possible explanation for the way the administration wants to distribute these funds other than partisanship?
They wanted to prioritize life safety, flooding, and American prosperity.
And you think all of the projects in California, Washington, other states don't do that?
It's not my judgment to make. That was what they prioritized within the funds that they had discretion to allocate.
Right. General, would you care to comment on this?
I'd go with Ms. Colosimo's
Let me guess,
answer.
no, you don't want to comment on this. Mr. Cameron, you want to comment on this?
Sir, I've got no insight at all into the Corps' budgetary process. I can tell you at Interior, the Bureau of Reclamation, we try to invest our dollars where we can manage, produce the greatest benefit and the greatest public safety.
Based on the technical and the engineering aspects of these projects, do you feel that that has been done? That taking money, $250 million away from the so-called blue states, giving it to the so-called red states, do you think that that's consistent with solid engineering and technical work that's been done on these projects? Do you really believe that, Ms. Colosimo?
I believe all the projects put forth are good projects. How
That's
they
not what I
align-
asked.
What I said was, I believe they were all good projects. How they stack against the projects one by one is difficult to answer in one soundbite.
Well, you
I
have
do
33
believe they
seconds.
represent
You
the
have
priority of
33
the
seconds.
administration of life safety, flooding, and coastal and inland
You already
ports.
said that. Try
That's
again.
what I believe.
Okay, you think that this was all on the level? You don't think there's any partisanship
I
at
believe
all?
they had to make trade-offs that I was not privy to.
Right, and those trade-offs were of a partisan nature, weren't they?
I don't believe they were partisan, but that's their decision
You
to
don't
make.
believe they were partisan. So what's the explanation if it's not partisanship?
It's the priorities they placed that were different than priorities than other projects. You would have to
Okay.
ask them directly.
I'm out of time, but I find your testimony to be completely unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. Going in the order of how folks showed up, I now recognize my friend and colleague, Ms. Lee of Nevada, for 5 minutes.
I was waiting for a Republican, but okay, thank you.
Give me these rules and
All
I
right,
try to
I
be
like it,
even-handed.
I like
so-
it, I'll take it. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you all for being here. Mr. Cameron, I obviously am concerned about the water negotiations on the Colorado River. And as we gather here, as you know, the American Southwest is confronting the effects of the worst drought in 1,200 years. In fact, our local newspaper just had an article on basically saying we expect Lake Mead, the water runoff to be about at 55% of average in this summer. So it's just getting worse. And so these negotiations are incredibly important. 40 million people, including my constituents, rely on the Colorado River. Successfully coming to an agreement and implementing new operating guidelines is incredibly important. I heard you say, I just want to get confirmation that the Bureau is prioritizing a consensus-based approach to crafting these guidelines as it has done during previous negotiations. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Congressman Lee. When first briefed the Secretary on the Colorado, he gave me 3 orders. The first is department's senior political leadership will be working intensely with the 7 states. The second priority or second decision was he really wants a 7-state solution, and we're to work aggressively with the 7 states to achieve that. The third is, in the unfortunate and we hope unlikely circumstance that the 7 states can't come to an agreement, he'll exercise his responsibility as water master in Lower Basin.
Great. I would be remiss if I didn't alert you to an amendment that was passed in the middle of the night during the natural resources markup of this big bad bill that is being negotiated in the Rules Committee as we speak, and I may have to leave to go propose an amendment. But it sets a precedent for the selling of public lands, which my colleague, Mr. Simpson, adamantly opposes. But more concerning to our work is it sets the stage for a potential water grab by the state of Utah, throwing a wrench into these already enormously complicated negotiations. And so I hope to get reassurance from you and the Bureau that we can ensure that this type of water grab would be addressed in these negotiations.
Congressman, I'm unfamiliar with what happened last night. What I can tell you is as recently as last week in Sacramento, met with the representatives of 7 basin states, and they were making substantial progress together in a very cooperative fashion. And I've got to give John Ensinger, the Nevada State Rep, credit. He's been a real leader and been very creative on these things. So really value Nevada's active involvement.
Absolutely. Well, our economy and our life depends on it. So I just want to alert you to that. I hope that you and your staff will take that into consideration. I want to now turn to the skinny budget that we saw that saw a $609 million reduction for the Bureau, which is crazy. And, we didn't get too many specifics, but I'm hearing some concerning reports that this may include zeroing out funding for the Water Smart program altogether. Now, listen, this is a highly successful program. When you want to talk about dealing with these negotiations, I think we should be doing everything possible for reduction and reuse of water. But this basically allows the Bureau to work with Western states to limit water loss by providing grant funding that has been critical for projects in Nevada, such as converting 1.5 million acre-feet or square feet of athletic fields to water-friendly turf. I hope, I just want to confirm, am I hearing only rumors, or is this what is coming down the pike?
Not in a position, as you know, to talk about the details of the president's budget at this point. I can tell you that water conservation, particularly in the Colorado drainage, is a priority of this administration, and we will use every tool at our disposal to work with the 7 basin states to achieve the water conservation goals in both the upper and lower basins.
All right. It's already been, just before I close out, it's been brought to my attention that existing Water Smart funding opportunities have been under review. So I hope we can get your assurance that these already appropriated Water Smart initiatives will still remain open for application.
Congressman, I believe actually sometime this summer, we're going to be coming out with the FY25 Water Smart Notice of Funding Opportunity. So, yeah, they are in the pipeline.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lee, I thank you for your questions. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend, the distinguished gentleman from California and the chair of the Defense Subcommittee of Appropriations, Mr. Calvert. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And General, thank you for what you're doing in LA. I know you're ahead of schedule. I hope to be done by July, I understand, on the cleanup part of of that disaster, and so we want to work with you to make sure that that it's done right. Most of the people signed up for it, just a de minimis number unfortunately did not, but so it looks like it's on schedule and you're going to get it all done by July?
We are on track right now to meet that need. I know that it was important to try to get Pacific Coast Highway open, and we're working with the governor of California on that as we speak.
Great. And I understand that some of your facilities are going to be used for the 28 Olympics, and so are they budgeting for that? Is the budget going to support the Corps' involvement in that national effort?
Representative Calvert, I don't have the answer to that question right now, but as soon as we know that, we'll share that with you.
Let us know. And regarding these negotiations with the upper and lower basin states here in California, obviously California is, like always, a donor state. And so, with the water rights primarily with Imperial Irrigation District and other agencies in Southern California. So I know those negotiations are ongoing, but obviously you have to recognize those previous water rights. And we love our friends in Nevada and Arizona and elsewhere, but that has to be worked out delicately. More water lawyers involved in that than I can count. But to make up for that, we're going to need additional water delivery from the north to the south. And obviously the San Joaquin Delta and trying to move this conveyance system along. How is that moving along? Unfortunately, we didn't go with a dual pipe system. We would have had it built by now, but nonetheless, how's the single pipe system coming?
So a couple of thoughts, Mr. Calvert. The first is I can assure you I am reminded almost on a weekly basis of who's got senior water rights everywhere in the Colorado Basin. So it's not something anyone lets me forget, and we're very mindful of that. Speaking in terms of the Delta and the Central Valley Project more generally, the administration is working very hard with the water districts, both north of the Delta and south of the Delta, to come up with a water management regime that will allow more water to head south. We're lucky this year. Shasta is fairly close to full, which is a good thing. But it's unlikely that that'll be the pattern, year after year after year. So we definitely need more water storage in California. There's no doubt about that. We've got no particular position on the governor's latest proposal for an additional conveyance. We're watching that closely. We're interested. Anything that creates more flexibility in terms of how we manage water in California would be very helpful and very much appreciated.
Well, obviously, we need to build sites. I'm going to have a meeting on that later today, and hopefully that is going to be, all the approvals are going to be finalized here very soon, and we're actually going to get that under construction. And of course, I hope Shasta, to me, is we've been going through the permitting process for so long on Shasta that hopefully we can get an agreement to we're just only going to raise that, 16, 18 feet. But that delivers about 600,000 acre feet of wet water. So it also works as well for water management. So I hope we can do that also. One last quick question to you, General. Obviously, the LA District's been actively involved in several projects in my district, the Prado Dam, Marietta Creek project, which I'd like to hopefully see completed in my lifetime. Not just like Mr. Simpson's time in Congress, within my lifetime. So how are we doing on those projects?
Representative Calvert, on Marietta Creek, Phase 2 Bravo should be awarded in June of this year. So we're excited to see that move forward, and we're engineering the Phase 2 Charlie, and we'll work to fit that in within available funding. On Prado, delighted to see that the base pre-construction service contract was awarded in April of this year. And what that allows us to do is to make sure that we have a construction contractor looking at our design, and they'll have an opportunity to go ahead and do the construction, which we hope to get out next year.
Just one final comment, if I can, Mr. Chairman. But I was around when we had the devastating floods in the early 90s that wiped out all those helicopters at Camp Pendleton. Santa Margarita Creek overflowed. And you know, it's a huge cost when that was, I forget the number, but it was a big number. So we don't want that to happen again. So I hope we can keep Marietta Creek on track and finish that up.
Chairman.
Great, thank you. And that does have downstream consequence even to my friend Mr. Levin because that goes into his district. So there's a project I hope to get funded in California.
Thank you, Mr. Calvert. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend and colleague from Indiana, Mr. Mervin, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, panel. I want to follow up on a line of questioning from our oversight hearing in February. There's an issue with finding storage for contaminated sediment in the harbors. This is extremely costly. In the case of the Michigan City Harbor, this hampers the Corps' ability to dredge the entirety of the channel. When I asked Major Condrey about the issue in February, there was not a clear answer on the path forward to address this issue. Specifically, what is being done to find additional capacity for dredged materials, and what are some of the specific challenges that you can point to that Congress might be able to be helpful in addressing?
Representative Mervin, thank you for that question. And we are tracking closely the dredged material disposal site at the edge of the Calumet River where it meets Lake Michigan. With the change of support from Illinois, what that has allowed us to do is to, in the lawsuit being dismissed, now we can have open discussions with the state, which are ongoing right now, which is, okay, what's next? We weren't able to do that before, so we got that cleared out of our way, and so those discussions are ongoing.
What are the discussions, what are the hurdles that have to be overcome with those discussions?
It's location. Where's the material going to go?
What are the options?
I don't have that at my fingertips, but
What's
we
the-
can get that to you.
What's the timeline in which a decision might be made?
Sorry, I don't know.
Okay. What, as a member of Congress, can we do, or Congress can we do to find new capacity? What is your percentage of that working out with Illinois?
So right now, we have nowhere to put that material, I believe, as you well know. And our commitment is to continue to work with the state to find a viable solution.
So you're working with the state of Illinois for a viable solution?
That's correct.
If that is not a viable solution, what's option B or C?
We have taken a look to see if we can use other CDFs around the area, particularly maybe down in Indiana, but the district reports that the capacity for those are already claimed. So that's not viable right now.
Okay. As my colleague had mentioned, it is a viable, obviously, this sediment is going to keep coming up.
Right.
When we talk about commerce, when we talk about the steel industry, when we talk about having the navigatable ability to be able to get through those waters, it all is contingent upon the dredging of the sediment, but yet we don't have an answer to where that sediment might go, which is holding up projects.
Absolutely agree. The importance of the Great Lakes harbors to the economy of the region is tremendously important. Also acknowledge that there's a great deal of concern out there that from the legacy pollution that is in those sediments, that the public rightfully fears that they don't want that to do any more harm. And so that's our commitment.
We're
And I know that's
absolutely on
not
the
your-
same page.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I want to protect the community first and
absolutely.
have clean waterways second.
Sir, absolutely. And so right now, or before, we had a roadblock that we couldn't advance discussions with the state because of the lawsuit. That roadblock has been cleared, and now so those discussions are ongoing. So if we believe that more engagement by any of the Great Lakes congressional representatives would be helpful, we'll certainly reach out.
Okay. What I'm asking for and getting to is that we have an open line of communications, that my office, along with the Army Corps, is able to understand what the path forward is. So the impact that it has on those projects going forward, we have an understanding of what will be going on and the protection of our communities.
Absolutely.
And then on a micro scale, Northwest Indiana is near Chicago. Chicago headquarters was on the list to be eliminated. It's now off the list. There is a small office in Griffith that allows people to use as a workstation. That is on the list. What is the current situation with, obviously, to assure me that the Chicago headquarters stays there, because that is the capacity that the federal building didn't have the ability for them to move into? And then secondly, what is the Calumet office in Griffith's future look like?
Representative, the district is staying put. The area office, we're still working this with GSA, but we have our own real estate authorities that I can enter into year by year leases if we need to. And we'll exercise that real estate authority if we have to. We're trying to find a more efficient way.
Okay. If we can find an efficient way to keep that, simply because it has to do with the productivity
That's right.
of what goes on in my district. And I thank you very much for your time. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Mervyn. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend and colleague from Washington, Mr. Newhouse, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that very much. Thank you all for being with us this morning, and thanks for your work. And it's such an important topic in the arid West. I want to direct my first question to you, Mr. Cameron. First of all, appreciate your response to a letter that my office sent to you, as well as some of my colleagues co-signed the letter, regarding the imminent failure of the Yakima-Tieton Irrigation District Canal. It's in my district. Certainly look forward to working together with you to find solutions to prevent this canal from devastating impacts of impending failure. I know the Bureau is aware of the current state of the canal and certainly the importance to the area and the lives and livelihoods literally hanging in the balance because of the situation there. What I'd like to do is just respond and what some of you mentioned in your letter, that you've directed the Bureau to provide any assistance necessary to the district to prepare and submit an application for the aging infrastructure account and to further evaluate whether the activities qualify as an emergency extraordinary operation and maintenance work, and that you expect a final decision sometime very soon, but by this fall, so that work could commence as early as 26. I just want to tell you how important it is to adhere to the timeline in order to prevent the catastrophic impacts of failure of this canal, which, I usually we like to say it could happen. It's imminent. It's just the situation is such that it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when. And so we have to be as prepared as possible. So just would love to have your commitment to continue working with my office and the irrigation district to make sure that this work happens.
Mr. Newhouse, you're absolutely correct. It's a very bad situation. I've met with representatives from the area on at least one, maybe 2 or 3 occasions. Actually, we were able to provide a small emergency grant. We were able to provide a loan. And as you indicated, there will be an opportunity to submit a proposal. Yeah, it's a very bad situation, and we are monitoring it carefully. We want to be as cooperative as we possibly can to reduce the public health and safety risk and the economic risk to the area.
Yeah, it truly is an all-hands-on-deck situation, so I appreciate your commitment. Thank you. And then I'd like to direct a question to you, General Graham, Lieutenant General. Thank you for being with us this morning. I wanted to draw your attention to 2 very important construction projects that are imperative to the movement of over $31 billion worth of cargo annually on the Columbia Snake River system. And certainly the first of that is the South Jetty located at the mouth of the system. It requires at least $30 million in additional funding to complete the rehabilitation project, which is certainly critical from preventing sand from impeding the navigation channel in the event of a breach. Second, it's my understanding that the gate replacement at Bonneville and McNary locks is being planned for 2030. As you know, an unplanned outage could be detrimental to the entire system, and there are no redundant locks. I must acknowledge the men and women of the Corps perform regular maintenance on this infrastructure that's critical to prevent an outage impacts navigation on the entire system. These projects were not included in the recently released FY25 work plan, and I'm concerned that the work will extend beyond the 2030 date target because of a series of components and systems that need to be repaired or replaced in sequence between now and then to stay on track. So just a question as to how you will work with the Portland and Walla Walla districts to ensure they're able to complete the jetty rehabilitation that was started almost 10 years ago, I believe, as well as stay on track for the 2030 gate replacements in a planned and coordinated fashion.
Representative Wells, thank you for those questions. Absolutely committed to making sure that the Columbia River system is maintained as a reliable engine of commerce for the Pacific Northwest. I've got a daughter that lives in Portland, and so I get out there as often as I
stake in
can.
this,
It is. It's amazing. So our commitment to make sure that the South Jetty work, critical work, that continues, as well as on Bonneville and McNary, making sure that the cranes are in good repair to be able to move the gates and that the gate maintenance is on track for 2030. And we'll continue to work with your office to keep you informed.
Okay, I look forward to that as the work plan moves forward. So thank you very much. Again, thank you all for being here. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
And I thank you, Mr. Newhouse. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend and the chairman of the House Ethics Committee, Mr. Guest of Mississippi, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To our witnesses, thank you for joining us today. As we begin, I want to first mention the incredible work of research and development that we see the Army Corps is conducting at your ERDIC sites across the country. I know that there are 7 labs across 4 states, New Hampshire, Illinois, Virginia, and then my home state of Mississippi. So I always want to take a moment to brag about the incredible work and what I believe is a substantial return on investment that those sites provide, not only the Army Corps of Engineers, but the American public as a whole. As we start looking at FY 26 budgets, I see that at least the information we have, we see a reduction in the Army Corps of Engineer budget. And while I and other members of this committee want to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, I believe that the funding of the Army Corps of Engineers is an investment. It is an investment for the American public. Unlike some other spending that the federal government may authorize, the money that we spend on the Army Corps of Engineers is extremely important. And you do some amazing work. And so as we look at the potential of a reduction in budget going into the next budgetary cycle, I know that the Army Corps manages a large portfolio of infrastructure across the country. Some of that infrastructure is aging. And so can you talk just generally about how we're going to make sure that with a reduction in budget that we are delivering on the commitments that we've made to various communities across our nation?
So if I may, I think just like we were talking about earlier with Mr. Levin, we're going to continue to focus on the priorities of the administration, right? So I would expect those same priorities to be focused on life safety, flooding, and American prosperity. That extends a broad net. It doesn't mean other things aren't included, but we believe that will be the initial umbrella under which we will fall. And there are many, many investments there.
And then I want to talk just about one instance specific to my district. I know that as we continue to move forward, we have issues at times with staffing, with personnel. Press release came out just today from the Army Corps of Engineers Mobile District announcing the closure of roughly half a dozen recreational sites across their area of control. One of those there in my home state of Mississippi, in which is a 3,800 acre lake, about 11,000 total acreages within the recreational area that has been closed at least temporarily. No time frame as to how long those closures will last. As we come into Memorial Day, as we come into the 4th of July, the summer months where people would be much more likely to use these recreational areas. And also these recreational areas have an economic impact to the businesses that serve those. Concerned that these temporary closures may last through the summer, well into the summer. Again, the times in which these facilities would be most used, we see at least this facility that I'm talking about specifically is being shuttered indefinitely. And so I just ask one, and I hope that this is the exception to the rule, that we don't see widespread closures across the country. But I would just ask for a commitment from each of you that you would look into the closings of this facility and the facilities in general, to see that these facilities reopen as quickly as possible, knowing that we need to make sure the facilities are properly maintained, that we are providing safety for those individuals that use those facilities, but balancing maintenance and public safety also with the use of those facilities. And so if y'all would each promise me that y'all would look into the reopening of these facilities as quickly as possible, I would greatly appreciate it. If anyone would like to respond further, would be happy to, but not asking for a more thorough response than that.
I would like to respond briefly, if that's okay. Appreciate you raising this, right? The recreation is an incidental mission for all of our projects, right? But a huge one to the local economy and what people see every day in their lives. And yet, we find ourselves in the situation where we're downsizing our workforce because of voluntary departures from federal service, and that's hit some places hard. And recreation's the first one that's really coming about. And so we are working with the Corps to work through a process to figure out how we can start to bring folks on during a hiring freeze. It is challenged by how close this was happening as Memorial Day to Labor Day season opens, right? And so that seasonal workforce is hard to gather. We're still hoping to get some of it, but we're working through it with a goal of at least partial opening, knowing that we're going to have some workforce challenges across. And to the workforce point, broader workforce, we're just now starting to see the numbers. And so we're actively managing it across portfolios, including recreation.
Well, thank each of you for being here today. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
And thank you, Mr. Guest. At this time, we're going to engage in a second round of questions. Consistent with the first, I would ask that folks keep their questions to 5 minutes so that we all can ask additional questions. I will begin with myself. General Graham, a matter that has been discussed earlier, but of prime importance to me and members on both sides of this dais, is Asian carp. It's of tremendous importance to my home state, the great state of Tennessee, preventing the spread of invasive carp further into the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. Program implementation has faced repeated and avoidable delays despite robust funding provided by Congress. I appreciate the Nashville District's renewed commitment to this work. Time, however, is of the essence on this, and we cannot afford to be discussing this program development this time next year. Sir, where are we on finalizing the program implementation? And as a follow-up to that, what steps are you taking to work with the state of Tennessee and other prospective sponsors so that projects can be ready for funding and execution as soon as the program management plan is finalized? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question, and we absolutely, our commitment is to do everything we can using our facilities to help limit the spread of invasive carp, both into the Great Lakes and throughout the Tennessee and Cumberland system and down through the Alabama and Tom-Bigby waterway. And so this program is tremendously important to us. And Chairman, the direct answer to your question is we'll continue to work with the states to see if we can get them to act as a non-federal sponsor. We'll continue to work with great partners in the Tennessee Valley Authority to make sure that when the programmatics are ready to go, that we aren't trying to figure out the PPAs, that ideally that those are on the shelf ready to go.
And I thank the General for his comments, and I just want to comment by saying, as issues come up from time to time throughout the district, this is an issue that I literally hear from constituents throughout the year. They have meetings to discuss the invasive carp species, and they are literally scared environmentally, economically, because where the carp have become a major problem, it's been extremely devastating. So I thank the General for his efforts, but we really want to get that done because I'm doing my best to assure these constituencies that I and the Corps and all the other partners are doing their very best to address this pressing concern. And I thank you, sir. And in that regard, and in the interest of time, I'm going to recognize my dear friend again, Ms. Capter, the ranking member, for 5 minutes for her questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, you know, I share your concern about the Asian carp. And I do wonder whether we have the right architecture as a country to solve this. In other words, you've got the big burden on your back as the Corps. But for example, in terms of genetic research, I don't know if the Vicksburg lab of the Corps is sufficient. I look at other instrumentalities that we have at NOAA, at Department of Commerce, that I keep thinking about our own research labs at DOE. We need a genetic solution, perhaps, I don't know, but it just seems like the carp are getting ahead of us. And we have a fish out strategy working with the Department of Interior. And I don't think it's enough. And I had one member from your state, Mr. Chairman, I won't say who it was, he came up to me. He never cared about it until it hit his district. And then all of a sudden, he went crazy. Okay, so I really do need your advice, not now, but think about who else could help across the government of the United States. What can we do to stop this spread? We're going to put up engineering barriers, that's part of it, but there are probably genetic controls. We can't seem to get to the scientific answer. And so I'm just asking for your advice there. Who else would you like to have partners around the table? I don't know how you feel about it, Mr. Chair.
Well, I share the ranking member's sentiments, and of course, for years, the ranking member has been a champion for the Great Lakes watershed, and I thank her for that. God forbid these invasive species get there. So I will commit to working with the ranking member and anybody who will work with us in Congress on this issue to get a viable solution. I yield back to the gentlelady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. And just, we really appreciate your advice and welcome your advice, General, in this area. I wanted to just switch for a second on the dredge material issue also. In our region, we have the largest budget in the Great Lakes for Lake Erie, as you well know. It fits every year. If you were to put all that material together, it would rise 400 feet high in the Cleveland Brown Stadium. And some people have said to me, well, you should fill the Cleveland Brown Stadium. But, you know, when you think about that year after year after year, and I think of our scientific capabilities, my goodness, what can we do with that dredge material? I keep thinking, can we put, Cleveland has the largest sewage treatment plant in all of Ohio. And it does amazing things because of science. We are able to produce fertilizer at the end of the process that EPA approves. And I keep looking at this dredge material. Again, I go to the high science. We have all these research labs. Is there a bigger answer here where we can use the dredge material? We wouldn't have to, you know, go to the 20th century solution of confined disposal facilities, but where we can put it through tubes, right? And we can figure out whether there's dissolved reactive phosphorus, whether there's beryllium in there, whatever it is. It seems to me that there's a way for detection. If we are going to Mars, you mean to tell me we can't decide what to do on Earth with our dredge material? Again, I ask you for your scientific and engineering recommendations that would guide us as, you know, mere House representatives here from our region trying to do the best for the people going forward. If you put a consortium table together with the EPA, with our energy research labs, with Vicksburg, whatever, let's go after this from another way that is perhaps more promising going forward. Maybe it's impossible, but I just, and in this regard, I'll just put on the table this interesting fact. As we try to look at new forms of power, we're realizing we're wasting a lot of power. And this committee is energy and water. We have solutions nobody else can come up with. The Cleveland sewage treatment plant in 1 year throws into Lake Erie the equivalent of 400,000 barrels of oil and waste heat. Imagine if we could use that power all across America, all across the Great Lakes, and create a sub-utility to help process this very stuff, this dredge material. Imagine if we could do that. We're thinking in the past. We have nuclear power plants along our shore. I believe by regulation, they throw that waste heat into Lake Erie at a temperature of 93 degrees. That's wasted thermal heat. We have the ability to do things that other centuries haven't had, but I don't see the thinking across the government. I think it's too stovepiped into different agencies rather than sort of crossbred. And I just share that with you as we try to figure out what to do with this dredge material. Please answer a question about if you could reshape how we find the answer, both to the Asian carp threat and to the contaminated sediment. Help us. Help us put that architecture together across the federal government. Final question, Mr. Chairman, real quickly. In terms of enlistment in the Corps, do you have skills that you are short? And have you considered creating a program like Starbase that works across DOD to help encourage young people to come into the sciences, engineering, solving real problems for this country? There is one called Starbase that is used in different places that is already authorized. I would love to have your suggestion on what we could do through the Corps. You touch every community in the country. I mean, you have an unbelievable ability to draw young people in, and I just want to push you a little bit in that direction. Thank you very much. My time has expired.
And I thank the ranking member for her questions. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, we have had some additional members show up, so I want to welcome them. At this point in time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Malloy of Utah, my friend, for 5 minutes. She is a water attorney by profession, so not only is she more than welcome on this committee, but she's going to help me on the water side. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Ms.
with the
Malloy.
chairman yields, I want to
Yes.
compliment you because under your leadership, and I hope I've helped, we've had such great turnout on our subcommittee. If you look across the Congress and what happens, this is a working subcommittee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members that have come.
And I thank the ranking member, and I appreciate that. The ranking member has chaired this subcommittee before. I do it. We've had other members do it. But there is a tremendous degree of cooperation, and it really is a source of pride and inspiration, I hope. But I thank the ranking member. With that, I recognize Ms. Malloy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the benefit of the people who are here to testify, I apologize that I missed the first round. I had another hearing at the same time, so I got here as quick as I could. Mr. Cameron, my constituents appreciate the funding and efforts Reclamation provided earlier this year to complete the 12-mile slough modification work pursuant to the 2024 SEIS. Given that last year's bypass of Glen Canyon Dam's hydropower generators cost the Basin Fund nearly $20 million and deferred critical maintenance, can you assure this committee that you will seriously consider a non-bypass or no-action alternative in your summer 2025 operational decision-making to avoid further financial and grid reliability impacts?
Ms. Malloy, coincidentally, I was just briefed on this topic yesterday.
Oh, good.
And we are looking at it. We're trying to be creative. We're trying to figure out ways that we cannot add to the financial, burden of the power users, for instance, and WAPA. So yeah, we are looking for options, but we also need to figure out a way to get rid of those smallmouth bass, as you're very much aware.
Yeah, thank you. Anything you can do to help avoid the ratepayers, my constituents, bearing that cost directly, I would really appreciate it. And we're happy to work with you as you move forward. Okay, for either Ms. Colosimo, I don't know if I'm saying your name right, I'm sorry, I haven't been here. Colosimo, thank you. Or Lieutenant Graham, Panguitch Lake Dam in my district it's a small dam, it serves a small town, but the dam started to crack last year, and they've been working to try to repair the dam, and they keep running into delays. And so they're trying to get a stream alteration permit, and they keep getting more requests for information. They don't feel like they're getting a lot of help, just a lot of letting the clock run while, it's spring and the lake's filling back up and the pressure's back on the dam. And what they need is a solution so that they don't lose that lake. Will you work with us to make sure we can get them the help they need in a timely manner so that we're not losing a dam and losing the water supply for a rural part of my district?
Ma'am, absolutely. This is a private dam, and they're looking for assistance, both probably with the permitting and the repair.
I think they're just looking for assistance with the permitting, but I will get you.
Okay. We'll contact your office, ma'am, and get in contact with the dam owner operator and see how we can help.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Another one for the two of you. In Tooele County, Utah, the local government is trying to plan transportation, and some of it requires navigating a process to obtain transportation rights of way across the Tooele Army Depot, which is DOD managed land, recognizing the Army Corps of Engineers engineering and environmental expertise. How can our local government, somebody like Tooele County, leverage the Corps' assistance to assess feasibility and impacts of new transportation corridors to improve regional mobility while maintaining national security interests? And I know the national security interest is really important to them, but that area is growing quickly and they've got to be able to have transportation infrastructure.
You have our absolute commitment that we'll meet with them to see if we can come in with a win-win solution that manages and balances out both of those needs, the national security interests and the needs for improved transportation to a growing region.
Okay, thank you. Last question. I'm moving quickly. This is one of those days where everything's happening fast. How is Reclamation working with Utah stakeholders to streamline permitting or NEPA compliance for our local water infrastructure projects, particularly in rural counties that may lack capacity to navigate federal processes?
Thank you very much for that question. So we work with our local water district partners on a regular basis to try to provide technical assistance. One of the things that we are also exploring is whether we can leverage the expertise and, frankly, the streamlined acquisition processes that our non-federal partners often have, so that we can leverage their ability to get contracts issued faster and at a lower price than might be the case of our federal agencies. That would stretch this committee's dollars as well. So we're always open to creative thinking about how to work more effectively with our partners.
Well, please work closely with my staff, and we would love to be the bridge between our Utah partners and both of your offices to make sure we're getting that assistance to people in a timely manner. The speed at which the federal government moves on these projects is a huge source of frustration.
We share that frustration, believe me.
Thank you. With that, I yield back.
And I thank you, Ms. Malloy. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend and colleague again from California, Mr. Levin, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cameron, back in February, DOGE published a list of agency offices whose leases were to be terminated. The Bureau of Reclamation Southern California Area Office, which provides water management support throughout Southern California, including in my district, was and is, I just checked the list again, on that list, along with hundreds of other facilities across the nation. The Southern California Area Office administers several essential programs that assist with water conservation and efficiency strategies, water recycling and desalination programs, and other watershed management activities. The decision to close this office and others like it makes our water less secure. And now Southern California is doing everything it can, charging ahead with innovative desalination and water recycling and reuse technologies. But when I look at what DOGE is doing regarding these lease cancellations, I fear that they'll leave communities like mine vulnerable, despite our best efforts to develop a resilient local water supply. Mr. Cameron, were you personally involved in the decision to close this office? Were you in the room?
No, sir, I wasn't. My understanding is that the General Services Administration provided of the department, other departments, a list of leases that they were planning to cancel. And we have been very actively involved in terms of going back to GSA and indicating situations where we thought eliminating those leases would be problematic.
That includes this office? You agree with the decision to close this office?
I'm not aware of that particular lease, to be honest with you, Congressman. I'm happy to look into it. I can tell you that there are quite a few Bureau of Reclamation leases where we've been actively talking about GSA about why it would be a real problem. But I'm happy to look into that one in particular.
What criteria do you think that DOGE used to decide which offices to close?
My impression is that it was actually a General Services Administration directive. Whether it was the DOGE people at GSA, I don't know. I think they were looking at leases that were about to expire across the whole government, across all federal agencies.
Do you think it's contrary to Reclamation's mission of protecting water resources and the interests of the American people to be closing these offices all over the place?
We clearly have an interest and a need to operate the government as efficiently as possible, to stretch the dollars that the subcommittee provides. And where we've identified situations where we think it's counterproductive to close offices, we've been and actively chatting with our friends at the General Services Administration, and at least in a number of instances, successfully so. I'm not aware of this particular situation, but I'm happy to look into it, Mr. Levin.
Well, we'll follow up with you on that. Ms. Colosimo, I want to get back to the California projects that I mentioned earlier. Were you personally involved in the decision-making to not fund any of those projects or not fund all of those projects?
No, sir.
And
Sorry.
do you have any idea who specifically was?
Well, we deliberate the package with criteria, and we submit to OMB, and OMB and the administration make the decision.
So do you
final
have
decisions.
an actual human being that was responsible for making the decision? Do you have an email? Do you have?
We don't make the decisions, we make recommendations.
I understand that you don't personally, but you just said that OMB relayed those decisions to you. Do you have any correspondence with them that would indicate why those decisions were made?
I do not have any correspondence.
How did
Office of
you?
Management and Budget did their
How did
business,
you
and they
learn? How
provided
did
us
you
the
learn
product.
that those determinations had been made?
They provided us the final product.
Who?
The Office of Management and Budget did.
Who specifically?
They didn't provide it to me, I don't have a name, but it would be our examining unit.
Okay. Who in your examining unit received the information?
In our office?
I'm trying to understand who at OMB made the call.
Well, I
Who
think it
made
goes
the
all the way up
decision?
to the director.
Okay, so you're telling me Russ Vogt, the director of the OMB, personally made the decision to take $250 million away from California and the blue states to give it to the red states. Is that your testimony?
My testimony is that he was engaged with his staff, as anybody would be, as
It's a
much as
simple
I
yes or
know.
no question.
I can't answer that question. I
Okay.
don't have full visibility on the information.
Okay, I appreciate that. We'll ask questions for the record to try to understand, get
That's
to the
fine.
bottom of it. You said before the criteria used were life safety, flooding, and American prosperity. Which of these criteria were not met by the California projects that I mentioned earlier?
I don't know the details of the California projects you're talking about.
Well, let's
so I
unpack
couldn't
one.
tell
How about the Sacramento Delta? Do you agree that that Sacramento Delta region is perhaps most at risk for catastrophic flooding of anywhere in the western United States?
I know they have challenges and risk, but I'm not at liberty to say what the trade-offs were on which the projects they chose versus
Do you
the
not
ones they did
think that
not.
it meets life safety or flooding or American prosperity to try to protect lives and property in the Sacramento Delta region?
I'm sure it does. How it stacks against other projects, it was not my call.
Do you agree or disagree that it's one of the most flood-prone areas in the western United States, if not the entire country?
It is certainly susceptible to flooding.
All right,
Long
so
historical
it
flooding.
sounds like it doesn't meet the criteria that you laid out before. I don't think OMB followed, and I think you're getting played by OMB, and you don't even know who at OMB. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Levin. At this time, I'd like to recognize the distinguished vice chairman of this subcommittee, my good friend from the great state of Texas, Mr. Cloud, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here. The work y'all do is extremely important to the economic lifeblood of our nation, and thank you for that. I first want to just say thanks, and especially to the Corps for the great work done at the Corpus Christi Ship Channel over the last several years. June 2nd, I believe, will be whatever you do when the project for, I don't know if you can ribbon cut across the channel, but the great work is under the water level, so a lot of people don't see it, but it's extremely important, and we certainly see the effects of it, so I want to thank you for that. I do want to touch on the Matagorda Ship Channel. That's been a difficult project to deal with over the last few years. For the first time ever under the Biden administration, we had a congressionally authorized project have the record of decision revoked, and after that, we have worked with the Corps to try to work on timelines, anything we can to speed up those timelines. There's been a number of delays along the way, some of them with excuses that weren't really appropriate, I guess, or valid. We sent an email to a wrong place, and so we have to delay this for a month and what have you. And then working with leftist NGOs that really don't have a stake in the area or district, to kind of cater to them and do what they could to drive up the BCR and delay this project and in an effort try to kill it. So under new leadership that understands the importance of our ports and the development of it, hopefully we can turn a course on that and get our timeline on track. I will say we've gotten a timeline on the SCIS, but we still have some work to bring some more detail to that, and then we need a timeline for the whole project. So could we work on getting that, and when could we expect that?
Yeah, so Representative Cloud, thank you for that question. And the beginning statement, I know you just got here, I said one of the first things we have to do in the Corps is we've got to get the engineering right. And on the Matagorda Ship Channel deepening, we did not get the engineering right. In fact, we got the trigonometry wrong.
Sure.
And that's what we sent over to the authorizing committees to authorize. And we didn't calculate correctly. We calculated how much material we'd need to remove from the channel, but we didn't calculate correctly where we would place that. And so that's what's causing, we have to go back and fundamentally redo the environmental impact statement because we have double the amount of material we're going to move from one place under the water to another.
Right. In times past, the practice has been to work concurrently with a revised supplemental impact study and to continue the project. So the fact that it was, the record of decision was revoked, and the whole point of a record of decision is to bring certainty to a project. I mean, that's what, in the name of the title, the record of decision. So we undid a decision. So, so that was concerning. But going forward, anything we can do to shorten, sometimes there's like 4 months to make a decision. Anything, we've had these discussions before, anything we can do to shorten those timelines going forward. This project's been pushed back plenty far enough. And with this president's help, I believe hopefully we'll be able to finally execute on it moving forward.
So our commitment to you, Representative Cloud, is to get the engineering right on this and to move forward as rapidly as we possibly can.
Sure. I appreciate it. Thank you for that. I wanted to touch on desal. Corpus Christi is a leader for the region as a water provider. One of the issues we've been looking at is what we can do to continue to provide water for the region. Desal, of course, being along the Gulf of America, being an important option. When we look just generally speaking at Texas, and Texas has really been overlooked when it comes to water projects. And I know we're waiting on the ASA to be confirmed, but I'm curious how long we think it'll take once we have confirmation to stand up the grant process and to be able to move that forward. And then really what we can do to turn the corner on getting funding to the state of Texas that, when you look at the projects that have been funded in the state of Texas when it comes to water, it's very minimal from a federal standpoint, where other states, and certainly when you think of federal dollars going to a region, it's because of federal purposes. And so, you have states like California that have high regulations that make it difficult, to provide an economic flow into the country, and then Texas, which is, pretty strong and friendly to business and being a lifeblood of commerce into the country, has been overlooked on these water projects. And so I'd like a commitment on what we can do to begin to look at and prioritize Texas and the region when it comes to funding of these water projects. Any comment on how long it would take to stand up at least the grant
So
process?
I think we'll have to loop back with you. Just to be clear, though, you're talking about a loan, right? It's from this infrastructure loan program, I believe. We don't have grants.
Right.
Okay, so I think we'll have to get the details and loop back with you if that's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
And I thank Mr. Cloud. At this time, I recognize now my friend, Ms. Lee of Nevada, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cameron, I received, I had a small offline discussion with Mr. Ensminger, and he appreciates too your leadership in these negotiations, so thank you. I don't envy you at this point, but can you give us any daylight on how you're actively working to build consensus, what you see as the prospect, given Mr. Calvert's line of questioning, obviously the water rights issue, but ultimately, I think it's imperative that we come to a consensus, because if we don't, it's going to be years and years and years of legal wrangling before we see any type of agreement, and I don't think we have it.
So, Ms. Lee, Reclamation and the 7 basin states have a pact to not disclose the details of negotiation.
I figured that. I thought I'd ask, okay?
But what I can tell you is at our most recent meeting in Sacramento, several of the 7 basin states reps came up to me and said, we made more progress in the last 2 days than we had in the last year and a half. So, I think in government, you have to be an optimist, or, why are you doing anything in government? So I'm quite optimistic that working with the 7 states, we'll end up getting to a good place on a timely basis. And I believe all 7 states are negotiating with each other and with Reclamation in very good faith. They all want a solution, and they all agree that it's much better for them to come to a deal than have the Interior Secretary impose a deal.
Absolutely. Godspeed. So, last month, UCLA released a report which found that states across the Colorado River Basin are squandering a critical opportunity to ease this water crisis. It's water recycling and reuse. While my home state of Nevada reuses 85% of our treated wastewater, the 7 basin states combined reuse only 26% of this water. Just to put it in perspective, if these states were able to collectively raise their reuse rates to just 40%, we're talking 14% increase, we could gain nearly 900,000 acre-feet of new water annually, enough to supply nearly 2 million homes. UCLA researchers emphasize this represents a significant percentage of the projected shortfall on the Colorado River, and a solution that could be pursued aggressively to ensure sustained management of the river. So I'm asking, is the Trump administration committed to continuing and building on the kind of bipartisan support for water recycling and reuse initiatives which Congress advanced in the legislation that was passed in the bipartisan infrastructure law?
Water reuse and recycling definitely have to be part of the solution. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We're obviously dealing in situations where individual states, individual municipal governments have to make their own decisions about what's the smartest thing for their particular locality. So we're mindful of their perspective on their water rights. We're mindful of their own economic decisions. But we are very interested in working with the municipalities across the Colorado Basin to promote and encourage water recycling. And Nevada's been leading the way. You're absolutely right.
Thank you. Well, thank you, and thank you for your leadership. And I'm finished. I yield.
And I thank you, Ms. Lee. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend again, Mr. Newhouse, Washington State, from great state of Washington, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just let me say, not only has this committee benefited from strong leadership over the years, but certainly the subject matter we deal with impacts every single community. Energy and water is our key building blocks to our economic and health success in this country. So
Thank you, sir.
So thank you. General Graham, in my state of Washington, the Corps is certainly responsible for the majority of the federal hydropower facilities, which, as you know, provide clean, renewable power to at least half, I think well over half of the constituents that I represent. It's my understanding that there's been cuts to the facility maintenance as well as the fish production staff at the 4 federal hydropower dams on the lower Snake. This is particularly concerning because these dams, as you know, produce an average of approximately 1 gigawatt of power and up to, in emergency situations, of 3 gigawatts of power. So I'm concerned that such cuts could jeopardize the administration's goal of achieving energy dominance for millions of people in the Pacific Northwest. Could you tell me, has the Corps designated any of these staff as essential staff, and either why or why not? And does the Corps have the staffing necessary to truly reliably operate the system for power, but also other federally authorized purposes?
Representative Newhouse, thank you for that question. And the importance of those facilities, we absolutely share your recognition of. We also share your recognition that for those facilities to operate reliably for your constituents, that they've got to be staffed by well-trained members. And so as we go through workforce optimization right now, critical work such as our power plant operators, critical work such as our maintenance divers, critical work such as any of our crane operators. We are putting that at the top of our list of we have to manage those folks very carefully to make sure that we have the right talent on board to continue to operate these facilities safely. So to recap all that, we're going through the process right now of looking to see what individuals with what skills are leaving the organization and what we have. And we're in the process of making sure that whatever it takes to move the right people where they have to be to continue to operate these facilities effectively for your constituents will do.
I appreciate that. Of all the resources we have and enjoy and manage, certainly the human resource is one that we have to get right. So thanks for your efforts there. Both you, General Graham, and Ms. Calissimo, permitting. It's often one of the biggest challenges that we have when it comes to completing projects, and adequate staffing is vital to completing that work as well, especially when there are interagency consultations involved. The FY25 core work plan, again, included $221 million for the Corps' regulatory program. However, I would say other agencies are not as fortunate. There have been staffing cuts at NOAA fisheries, in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that may impact this process, and the skinny budget proposes significant decreases to these agencies. So, to either your knowledge, have reductions in staffing, had an impact on the permitting processes, and what's the Corps' plan for getting consultations completed in a timely manner for these civil works projects, which are so important for these projects sought by a regulated public?
So, sir, thanks for that question. It's a really important subject, as you say, and I think the big thing overarchingly here is for the interagency process to work, right? And we have to get those connections happening, particularly as we're losing staff across agencies, because the already existing relationships are weakened the minute you lose one person. Yeah. So I think there's things we need to do in DC to make sure we're setting up the agencies collectively for success, both on civil works projects, but also to the permitted public through normal permitting processes. I think the other part is rules are happening and getting updated at the same time. So we have to be current with what the best tools are to make sure we're able to not continue to make stoppage, if that makes sense. I mean, there is risk when you're doing new rules at the same time you're losing staff. There's also opportunity. And so I think there is a lot of collaboration across the aisle to try and make sure we're doing the right things here. So we need our leader to arrive to do that with his counterparts, but we're beginning that already.
Okay. General Graham, any comment?
So Representative Newhouse, the health of our regulators right now, it's as we're going through the process of looking to optimize the federal labor force, right now, we're pretty healthy on our regulators. So it's not a great concern for me right now, which is a good thing.
Okay, I appreciate that. I see my time has expired, Mr. Chairman. Apologize, but thank you all for being here with us again today.
Mr. Newhouse, I thank you again, sir, for your questions. It has come to my attention that a few of the members would like to ask some very brief questions in the third round, being mindful that it's 11:50. I'm going to personally pass on my third round and recognize the ranking member, Ms. Capter, for her question, and anybody else who would like to engage in the third round. Thank you.
It's very generous of you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank you, General Graham, for including priority for the SULOCs and the continuing efforts on that project, and appreciate the fiscal year 25 work plan, included $264 million. However, that was $63 million below the House bill and $186 million below the Senate bill. I just want to reemphasize that funding for the SULOC is critical because there are many time-sensitive contracts over the next 2 years. And may I ask both yourself and Ms. Colosimo, what is the Corps' plan to ensure the project receives adequate funding so that the contracts can proceed as closely as planned and not result in further cost increases?
It's a priority, ma'am, and I think we recognize the value of this project and continuing to make sure that happens. So we're going to continue to advocate the merits of completing the work on time and within budget and getting the resources to make those increments happen. It's at a vital stage.
Thank you.
So, ma'am, to building upon that, the 4 remaining contract options that would expire at the end of this fiscal year, we believe with the money that we got in the work plan that we can award all 3 of those. And so that's great news.
All right, thank you for trying on the contracting. Is it still open for contractors to?
So in this case, these options were part of it was a base plus option for the contractor that's doing the current work. And so these options are already priced out. And so as long as we provide the funds, which with the work plan funding, we will be able to do, there should be no issues executing those options 4, 5, and 6.
My last 2 questions are of Mr., let's see here. In terms of the Bureau of Reclamation, over the last several years, what percentage of agriculture has been cut off in the West that simply doesn't get water anymore? Or does it continue as it has in the past? I don't have a sense of what's happening on the ground. And then I wanted to also ask the General again, are you full up on your recruitment, or do you have enlistment shortages? And if so, can you provide us with a list of what are the skills that you need that you don't have?
So, Ms. Capter, the answer to your first question is it varies a lot from year to year and region in the West to region, depending upon the hydrology. I can tell you that for the first time in a very long time, the Klamath Basin in California and Oregon has got plenty of water. Now, that probably won't be the case 2 years from now, but for this year, we're lucky. And also, this year, Reclamation was able to provide more water to Central Valley, California farmers than in the last several years. But we really are at the mercy of the weather and the snow and the rain, plus, of course, the regulatory constraints I know you're aware of. But while I'm answering your question, I do want to point out that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the U.S. Geological Survey are both heavily involved in Asian carp. So I hope that if you have friends on the Interior Subcommittee, that they're tracking that as well.
Sir, thank you, Mr. Cameron, for that. The problem is we have all these geniuses, but the discomfort we feel is because it doesn't seem like there's a general. There's a lot of people out there, but we don't really have a coordinated effort, in my opinion. And believe me, we study this a lot, but we don't, and on the science front, I don't see the surge. I just don't see it. And so we're fishing out. This is really like, 1850, rather than 2050, in the way we're looking at this. And so I just mentioned that. In general, what about needs in the Corps? What should we be telling audiences? What should we be saying you need?
So 2 points. I wear a couple hats for the Army. One of those is I oversee the tactical engineer branch that does the warfighting piece, and the Army's meeting its enlistment goals. Great deal of effort that entails to make sure that we get citizens coming in to continue to join our ranks, and I'm absolutely delighted to report that right now is going well. On the Corps of Engineers side, we're primarily a civilian organization with military leadership. Our biggest challenge with our civilian workforce, and it's been that way since I've been here, is the schools producing STEM graduates, and I'm sure that that's the same for any of those. And so when I was a district commander, we worked really close, as all of our 44 districts do, with the local universities, because that's where it happens, to try to encourage young minds at the high school level to get out and explore careers in the science, technology, and engineering realm. That's where it's got to start. We can't look any different than what the schoolhouses are, and you got to get them in high school.
How do we work with the Corps in order to, we have a Corps small, teeny office in our area. How do we sponsor a symposium for young people? How do we do that? Think about it. Let us know.
Okay.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Capter. Ms. Malloy, you're recognized for third round.
I will keep it brief. I know you guys have been here for a long time. Mr. Cameron, we're going to submit some questions for the record to you on the Central Utah project and the changes in funding there. I'd rather have you have some time to do some research and get back to us with thorough answers than put you on the spot here. So just be prepared that that's coming. And like my colleague, Ms. Lee, I also represent one of the Colorado River Basin states, so thank you for the assurance that the state negotiations are moving forward. And with that, I will yield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Malloy. A few comments. Again, I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for being here today, and as the ranking member did allude to in her comments, you saw tremendous turnout on both sides of the dais. That's not only out of respect, it's out of admiration for each and every one of you all. You were here before us in February. That was a very furtive hearing, as was today, so we accomplished an awful lot. So I do sincerely thank you in that regard. For the record, if you could please ensure that the hearing record, questions for the record, and any supporting information requested by the subcommittee are delivered in final form to us no later than 4 weeks from the time that you receive them. Members who have additional questions for the record will have until the close of business Tuesday to provide them to the subcommittee office. With that, I say thank you, and the subcommittee stands adjourned.